between, and drink a chair. Entre y tome asiento. Hello, I'm going to do the Booktube Newbie Tag by Brenda C. originally, and it's so sad that she has done this tag that has been reproduced hundreds and hundreds of times, and she's no longer on Booktube or on YouTube. Number 1, why did you start this channel? Besides talking about books, I'm going to try to keep it to 15 minutes so that I don't start repeating myself. To make Puerto Rican books and literature visible, because I noticed paucity of the Puerto Rican presence in Booktube. Number 2, what fun and unique things will you bring to the community? Hopefully, the Puerto Rican presence and me. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about both Puerto Rico and me as time goes on. Number 3, what are you most excited about when it comes to creating this channel? Well, sharing Puerto Rican literature and books and creativity. For example, just this last, since discovering Booktube, I've been doing a lot of reading, not only in English, but also in Spanish. And just finished this one for nonfiction. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Nonfiction November. Mariana Bracety, Una patriota que no claudicó, by Raquel Rosario Rivera. Mariana Bracety is our Betsy Ross. And she embroidered, she sewed one of the first revolutionary flags that were waved in 1868, en el Grito de Lares, and it's a fascinating story. This was a fascinating woman. And then, not for Nonfiction November, but a book that I read many years ago, and I just realized that he signed it. Ugh. So excited about that. So excited about that. It says, to Albamar, my name is Albamar. Many thanks and regards, R Rivera. R Rivera was an English professor, a Puerto Rican English professor in New York City, and he wrote this fascinating novel called Family Installments, which I highly recommend. Then I'm reading for Nonfiction November in English, Ain't I a Woman? By the beloved Bell Hooks. I could be, for another nonfiction, another Puerto Rican book, very timely, what is happening here in the island. Ensayos para una nueva economía. Different economists. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 economists, 13 Puerto Rican economists talking about our economic situation and the future. Then for Nonfiction November, another book that has to do with Puerto Rico, American Gunfight, The Plot to Kill Harry Truman, by 2 North American authors, but having to do with our history. For Nonfiction November, Prison Writings by Leonard Peltier. For Nonfiction November, Naomi Klein, This Changes Everything. It's been on my TBR forever and love it. Another one of the Puerto Rican books lately, bought just this last week, Hostigador en serie. We have our own little Me Too situation going on in Puerto Rico, lamentably. And this is by journalist Ivette Sosa. And then, at some other point, I will definitely be talking about this one, El resplandor de Luzbella. Oh my God. Really? De Juan López Bauzá. Gotta get it, people. And you have to demand, people who live in the diaspora, you gotta get people to translate this book. For real. You won't regret it. And that's just a little look at what we might be talking about on this channel in the future. Why do you love reading? Well, because it's a window to new experiences, and I find learning about other cultures and other people, other places, utterly fascinating. What book got you into reading? Let's go a little bit into my background briefly. As a child, one of my childhood memories is going with my father, who was an avid reader, more so an avid collector of books. And we would spend hours and hours and long, long hours just window shopping in different bookstores in Chicago. Also, I went to an inner city public school at a moment when public schools had art, physical ed, libraries, and my inner city school, in which my brother and I were the only two Puerto Ricans, the rest were African American, with African American teachers who, my first grade teacher, Mrs. Brown, played piano. And we had a well-stocked library with a very dedicated librarian. And we would go weekly to the library in the school. And I remember distinctly, especially two of the books that I would reread constantly that called my attention. One was All of a Kind Family by Sidney Taylor, which was published in 1951. And another one, The Man Who Didn't Wash His Dishes by Phyllis Krasilovsky. And they just captured my imagination. I would revisit those books all the time. And also in the neighborhood, when every summer vacation, we were encouraged to go to the public library in the neighborhood, and every 2 weeks, and not waste time during our vacation. And yeah, so that's what happened. That's how I got into reading. My father and my inner city black public school. What questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? The question I would ask my favorite booktubers is, how can you read and binge watch Booktube? Binge watching on Booktube and YouTube has really cut down on my reading. I have to stop. What challenges do you foresee having to overcome while starting this channel? Time, keeping my videos short and sweet, not rambling, maintaining my focus on the people I want to connect with, And over everything, sobre todo, language. I am bilingual, and so are a lot of other Puerto Ricans uh, here and in the diaspora. But increasingly, uh, there are people who are more English dominant, especially in the diaspora, even here on the island. And there is a large sector of Puerto Ricans who are predominantly Spanish, and that's our language and it's our culture. And as you saw before, most of our books are published in Spanish. So, one of my challenges would be to how to address uh, the language issue. And I saw a young lady recently looking for Puerto Rican booktubers on Booktube, um, who I think helps me address that uh, situation with subtitles. So if someday I start rambling in Spanish, I'll include subtitles and captions, and you can read along. Because that's a manifestation of our reality, of our reality in Puerto Rico. That is our reality. When did you start reading as a discipline? In high school. Another inner city school, my high school, was very diverse, the high school. We had African Americans and Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and white students. It was a huge high school, took up a whole city block. And in that high school, um, there was a teacher that I had for 2 years, Miss Rosati. Um, Miss Rosati was very strict and very demanding. And she made us read at least 5 periodicals uh, every week or every month. Every time the periodicals would come out, she would make us read them. And not just any periodical. She didn't want us reading comic books, just like my dad. My dad didn't want us to read comic books. That's how I started reading Junior Classics Illustrated. She wanted us to read Atlantic Monthly, Harper's, Harper's Bazaar, Harper's, Time, the New York Times, the Tribune, the Sun Times. She had us read Moby Dick. She had us read Shakespeare. She was tremendous. And I was lucky enough to have her for 2 years. Fantastic teacher. And she got me so into reading that I would, when I reached my rebellious period in high school, which most every adolescent does, I think, I used to cut classes and go to the library, the public library downtown Chicago, just to read and just to peruse the bookshelves and see what I could find. Number 9, where do you read? I read everywhere. And now that I have an app on my phone, I can read outside of the house also. But here in the house, I read on the sofa, at the dining room table, and in the car, wherever. What kind of books do you like to read? Mostly history, historical fiction, and especially anything that has to do with Puerto Rico, because I think that having been brought up in the diaspora, that's part of it's a laguna. It's a space that I feel that must be filled for me and for future generations, just in case. I can give up any book in English I do not give up books in Spanish, especially by Puerto Rican authors. I can buy them and give them to you, but not give them up and not loan them out. No, that's going to be for my grandkids. So that's it for now. I think I'm in my time limit. I kept it under 15 minutes. And any comments, any suggestions, I'm open to them. And I'll see you soon. Hasta pronto. Nos vemos. Adiós.